Hello, and welcome to the Unstoppable Masculinity Podcast. My name is Sam Joseph, and if this is your first time listening in, I want to say welcome and enjoy. This is a place for men to get some knowledge, wisdom, and depth. And my goal here is to talk about some real issues and hopefully bring some clarity based on my experience and learning. Most of the last 8 to 10 years for me has been going on a significant investigation of myself as a man, my place in society, what my experiences mean for me, what I need to integrate, what has been garbage, and what mistakes I've made that I need to heal and make sense of. And I think lots of men are on this path, basically, and they're given cheap surrogates, in my opinion. Some of this comes in the form of self-help, what they should do to increase their discipline and routine. That's all important. You should do that. But I had a mentor tell me one time that you need to be able to know and judge what is deep and what is not deep. So all the self-help stuff is good. It can make your life more orderly and structured. But once you get that sorted, you realize that there's no depth there and you're still left wanting. Anyway, that's a bit of a long introduction. If this is your first episode, the topic I wanted us to break into today is on male loneliness. Now, it's well known that men have smaller social circles than women. They also don't like getting into the weeds of certain topics. They don't necessarily like gossiping. They kind of keep to themselves. Now, this behavior isn't terrible on face value because, to be honest, it's kind of pragmatic. Life is quite difficult and you need to get up and get things sorted. You have a job, you have responsibilities, and there's expectations on you to get things done. Maybe for a small window of time, it is actually practical to just push things down and put things under the rug just so you can get through the day or the week. The problem happens in terms of timeline, which is when the days turn to weeks and the weeks turn to months and the months turn to years. Now that's kind of a trap that we all fall into, which is we might be feeling a particular way, in this case, lonely, not attached, and sometimes isolated. And what we tend to do is pretend like that's not affecting us. This is kind of a dangerous place to be if it happens for too long, because fundamentally it's unnatural to be alone for too long. There are periods in life where you need to withdraw, become a bit more introverted, go within, but it's actually very, very bad for your physiology and your well-being if you run from the world for too long. If you kind of leave the world in an attempt to self-protect yourself from isolation and rejection. And you do this because no one wants to be hurt, and we all tend to try and find validation from others. If they approve of us or if they like us, that makes us feel good. It makes us feel like we have worth. What happens with most men when they start to get rejected time and time again, or they stop seeking validation, they go into this emotional protection mode where they will shun their own selves from the world in an effort to kind of pad themselves, because it's just they're in pain. And that pain is deeply emotional. Some might say it's an emotional wound, and it's just too much to unpack. And like I said before, they've got shit to do. They've got responsibilities. They have a schedule to run, and they just don't have the energy or the time to go and unpack this. And another element of this is just fear. They're not sure what they might find. Once they open up that Pandora's box, God knows what's going to come out. It might be stuff from childhood. It might be stuff that happened to them when it comes to self-image. Like they're not ready for that. In a man's mind, don't fix what's not broken, right? When it comes to loneliness and isolation. It's too big, it's too deep. who knows what might come out of that Pandora's box if you start looking, that might come out into your life and take you out for another few weeks or months because it's actually made you feel worse. So this is kind of what's going on in a lot of men's minds. And it's one of the reasons why they put up with being, well, not really being, but feeling lonely and isolated and not putting themselves out there. So what's some of the potential fixes if a man, maybe yourself, finds yourself absconding from the world in a way that is not normal? And you really do want to feel connection, and you want to feel acceptance, and you want to be around people, but you're kind of shunning yourself from the world for whatever reason. I would say just go small, basic, and practical. So again, I said earlier that we're social. There is a kind of energy transference, a kind of communication or nourishment that happens when you're around people, especially when it's an intentional thing. Like you want to be around people because you just want to enjoy their company, or you just want to do things together, something specific. So what I'd recommend is go enroll yourself in an activity, maybe a physical activity. It could be an art activity. It could be anything. It could be even a book club that requires people. And that activity should have a schedule. So what I mean by that is there should be times in the day or in the week where it's organized that people will show up to do a certain thing. Just do that for a month, and you will start to be around people under the basis of a shared interest. Then you'll start to feel connected, because as you come together around the shared interest, there will be other things and other personalities that you will gravitate towards, that will gravitate towards you. And then you will start to feel like you're not such a pariah. If we've isolated ourselves too much, and I'm speaking from experience here, that kind of wall needs to be broken down intentionally. And a safe way to do it is to pick an activity that you like that's been organized for a group, and you just show up for a month. It's also nice if that activity has a majority men demographic. Men, when they're around other men, they start to feel like they're normal. Men experience the world very differently to women. We tend to get fed a lot of messages about life, about what it means to be a good person, based on a feminized centric narrative. So that comes to us from the school system, it comes to us from the media. Most of the talking points is women giving us their feminized values. Now that's all well and good, but if that's all you hear for most of your life, as a man, you're going to hear that and go, well, shit, like I don't see and feel the world like that, so something must be wrong with me. So when a man spends time with other men, he gets to see that, hey, these guys, at least on some aspect, are like me. And something as simple as, if you're a straight man, you like women. So just by talking to a man, you start to see that, hey, he's attracted to women, I'm attracted to women. I'm not some dirty sexual pervert for that proclivity. That's totally normal. Something's not devastatingly wrong with me. And that might sound funny to you, but so many men are told that they're bad men because they're attracted to female parts. You're not. You're not a bad man. You're absolutely normal. And of course, you should learn to express that in healthy ways, but the impulse and the attraction, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So yes, that's one way to do it if you're dealing with isolation. Get yourself around an organized group of people under a specific interest. So I've done this a few times. I would suggest a physical activity. If you're not sure about your interest, just pick a physical activity. It's good for you. It doesn't really matter what the sport is, as long as you have some kind of curiosity about it. So something for me, I don't like sport, but personally, I love lifting weights. So getting around a group of guys who meet up at the same time to lift weights together for an hour, a couple times a week, is great. You don't even have to know these guys very well. You just need to get a Facebook group together and say, hey, hitting the gym at this time, who wants to join? And let it develop from there. The other thing is signing up to a martial art as well, because there's a specific calendar, there's specific times when classes are people tend to show up, or the same people tend to show up for the same classes. So you get to be around people and the same people over and over again. So you get more exposure to them. And slowly, these walls of isolation start to come down, and the loneliness starts to dissipate. Basically, you need to be around people. Kind of paradoxically, about why most men tend to feel isolated is they actually don't like spending time with themselves. So that feeling of loneliness happens because on the other side of the coin, they spend so much time with other people, like so much. They're always been talked to either by people on social media, they're watching heaps of videos, they're engaging online with people, their social life is bustling. And then when they sit down by themselves in their room, they just hate being around themselves. Like, they don't know who they are. They don't have any certainty around their interests or their passions or even their sense of self. And so they start to feel a little bit edgy and anxious. And it's that feeling alone and isolated in your own body. And then they just go run out and try to fill the day with other things or just hanging around with other people. Those kind of guys that I've seen, they tend to have quite shallow relationships with other people because they're secretly using other people to distract them from their own sense of desolation in their soul. What I mean by that is they just feel like when they're by themselves, alone with themselves, they have nothing to offer themselves. So that's a very sad place to be. And the only way through that one, that's very difficult, that is to actually spend more time alone and cut out as much stimulus as possible. Now, you don't have to go from a bustling social life to all of a sudden being alone for a week. What I would say is you would structure one intentional piece of time in your day where you get to be alone, and that could be alone doing something with yourself for yourself. Something like journaling is great. Even reading a book by yourself. Leave your phone in the other room and just have an hour by yourself with yourself. When I did this almost 10 years ago, first 15 minutes is always awkward because you're spending time with yourself and it almost feels like you're spending time with a stranger and there's no one else. Kind of feels like, if you've ever been introduced to someone, you don't know them, but let's say a mutual friend introduces you, maybe at a party, and then that mutual friend walks away and then you're left with this new person. And then after all the small talk, the conversation dries up and you get the awkward silence. And then it's super uncomfortable because you're like trying to fill the space with cheap talking points. So that's kind of what it feels like when you start to learn to spend time with yourself for the first time. But it's worth it because at the end of the day, you're stuck with yourself. So you better learn to at least like yourself. And that starts with getting to know yourself a little bit more. The best way to do that is to stop the stimulus coming into your brain cells for at least 1 hour a day. And you sit down with a book, sit down with your journals and your thoughts. Let yourself daydream, let yourself wander around. And if you got a busy day and it's chockers, I would just make sure, set your alarm. And once that alarm goes off after an hour, could even be 30 minutes, doesn't really matter, but I would say no less than 30 minutes. Once that phone alarm goes off, close the book, stop the journal, and get back to your day. But make that consistent and you'll start to see something really phenomenal happen in your life, which is not only can you be alone by yourself, you're actually very content in every situation. You're more stable because once you know how to be good with yourself, once you get to know yourself a little bit, what you're like, what you don't like, you start to attract different kinds of people and you start to be more confident in social situations because you don't give a shit if you're standing at the park by yourself having a coffee. You don't care what people think of you because you're totally engrossed in just being by yourself and kind of tickling your own interests, letting your mind wander and actually validating yourself. It's quite a powerful practice in some ways, but you ain't going to get there if you don't make time to shut off the other voices and the other stimulus that's fighting to take your mind. Okay, it's quite a big episode that time. If you can apply one thing, I would say try it for a week, push it to 30 days if you can, and see what happens. Test it. It's totally free. Literally nothing to lose here. Okay, my name's Sam, and This is the Unstoppable Masculinity Podcast. Oh, and before I forget, there's some links in the description. If you want to learn more about Unstoppable Masculinity, there's some free resources down below. Click and have a look. So enjoy, good luck, and Godspeed.